Hello everyone, welcome to AWS Tutorials. In AWS Tutorials, we create workshops and exercises to learn about AWS services. Today, we are going to talk about how you can use AWS Glue DataBrew to access data from a database. So let's get started. Now, I have created many other videos about Glue DataBrew to give introduction about the service and a little demo about the service. So I'm not going to spend much time talking about what Glue DataBrew is. But just to set the introduction right, DataBrew is a visual data preparation tool which can be used by data analyst or data scientist to clean, normalize, or transform their data for analytics and machine learning purposes. And when you are performing transformation on the data, then you use pre-built transformation blocks. You don't have to write any code. So pretty much the bold letters you see here are the core or the key to describe the DataBrew key features. First feature, it is a visual tool. Second, it is used by data analyst and data scientist for cleaning, normalizing, transforming the data. And you clean, normalize, transform the data for machine learning or analytics purposes. And you can do transformation using pre-built transformations. And there are over 250 pre-built transformations. And you don't need to write any line of code. Yeah, that's pretty much what DataBrew is. Now, there are scenarios when you want to access data from your database using Glue DataBrew, and then you want to perform certain transformation on the data, and then you might say that, hey, I want to have a copy of the data in the S3 bucket. So there could be scenarios where you have to access data from the database, and then you perform certain transformation on the database, and then you save it to your S3 bucket for any further use, whether you want to use it for reporting or some other analytics or machine learning purposes. And this is the scenario we are going to discuss today, that how you can use DataBrew to perform this kind of data access from the database. Now, when you, before I go to detail of that, so the kind of databases or the type of database engines which are supported by DataBrew at this point of time are your SQL Server, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Oracle, and Redshift. So these 5 different database engines are supported by DataBrew at this point of time. So moving on. So when you are trying to access data from the database in DataBrew and try to transform and save into S3 bucket, your database could be located in couple of possibilities. And I'm talking about 3 high-level possibilities here, but there could be scenarios beyond that. And if so, yeah, feel free to write me in my comment box if you need my recommendation about how to connect in those scenarios. But the could be that you have a database running inside AWS Cloud. It could be a database running on a EC2 instance virtual machine, or it could be a database running on an RDS database. That could be one scenario. Other scenario is that your database is in some other network. Could be your on-premises based network or some other network outside AWS. This database is located. A third scenario, which is a very rare scenario, but that is you have an internet-facing database, which is, to be honest, is very rare. But technically, yeah, you can have scenarios where you are accessing database which is public-facing, internet-facing. And as I said, that there could be scenarios beyond these 3 things. But if you have any questions about those scenarios, feel free to ping me on my comment section, and I'm more than happy to support you if I could for your questions. So let's take each of these scenarios one by one, that how do you connect to your database in each of these scenarios. And of course, I have a demo towards the end of the presentation to show one of the flows documented here. So the first scenario is your database is within your AWS Cloud. And again, this database could be running out of RDS instance, or it could be running on some EC2 instance. And in that case, Glue DataBrew actually is a you can say it's a serverless service. So it needs a way to connect to database, and it connects to database using a network interface, Elastic Network Interface, ENI. So you need an ENI. The DataBrew need an ENI in order to connect to this database. So what you do that you create an ENI. You create an ENI in the same VPC where your database is, so that this ENI can talk to your database, and through this ENI, your Glue DataBrew will talk to database. So basically, Glue DataBrew is actually not running on any well, it's running definitely on some server, but you don't have the access to that server. So it is a serverless thing for you. So this Glue DataBrew will use ENI as a way to talk to your database, and this ENI can be created using Glue Connection. Okay, so you use Glue Connection to create an ENI into the same VPC where your database is located, and through that ENI, then DataBrew can connect to database and read the data, and then of course after that it can transform and save to S3 bucket and so forth. So that's one that's how you connect to a database running within your AWS Cloud. Now, there could be a scenario where your database is actually running in a different network altogether. It could be an on-premises based network, and it could be any other cloud provider as well. In that case, what we do? So if that is the scenario, first you need to set up communication between those networks. Okay, so you create a VPC. You create a VPC in your AWS Cloud environment, because when you want to talk to a network, you can talk only through a network. So your Glue DataBrew does not have a network of its own. So you need to create a VPC first of all, and then you set up a VPN connection. Like in this case, I'm taking example where your data is in a corporate data center. So we create a VPN connection between this VPC and this corporate data center. And then after that, you create an ENI in this VPC using Glue Connection, and then through this ENI, the Glue DataBrew will be able to read data from this database over here. So basically, by creating a VPC and setting up a VPN, now this VPC has access to your database, and then you create an ENI in this VPC, and then the ENIs can access the database, and then this Glue DataBrew will simply use this ENI to access the data and then do the rest of the job. Again, in this case, ENI is created using Glue Connection. So that's the second scenario. Third scenario, as I mentioned to you, is a very rare scenario where your database is internet facing. In fact, this is the scenario I'm going to use today for a demo because I wanted to use a database which I have not deployed, which someone else has deployed. It is more fun that way. What you do in this case, the flow is similar to the previous one. You first create a VPC. And then this VPC will have a Glue connection, and this VPC should be configured in such a way that it can access the database. That means it can access the internet-based resources. So this VPC should be configured to access internet-based resources, and then you create an ENI in this VPC, and then using that ENI, your Glue DataBrew can then simply access. So your Glue DataBrew will use ENI. And this ENI can access internet-based resources, so it will simply access this internet-facing database to fetch the data, and then of course you transform it and save into S3 bucket. So that's how you access a public database or internet-facing database. So these are the three typical scenarios you can come across. If you have requirements beyond that, and if you still have question how to connect, feel free to ping me on my comment section, in my comment section. So let's move on to what we are going to build today. So what we are going to build today is actually the internet facing scenario. So I did some research and I found out a database which is exposed by RNA Central actually, and that is the internet facing database. And then what we are going to do in this case, that we will launch a VPC which will have a private subnet and public subnet, and then we will use NAT gateway to make this private subnet talk to the database. So basically your private subnet will use NAT gateway to talk to the internet facing database. Then in this private subnet we will launch an ENI using Glue connection, and then we'll use that ENI in our Glue DataBrew to simply access the data. So this is the pattern we are going to implement today in the demo part. So let's get started. So first of all, here we go. So first of all, let me show you what database I'm going to use. And this is the database I'm going to use. It's called RNA Central database. It's a public Postgres database. And if I talk about who they are actually, they are free public resource that offer actually non-coding RNA sequences. To be honest, I don't know much about these RNA sequences. For me, and nothing to offend RNA Central, for me it is just a technical database which I'm trying to connect. So here are my database details. I have a host number, port, database name, username, and first thing first, we will launch a VPC which will have both private and public subnet with NAT gateway, so that I can use that VPC as a way to connect to outside world. And outside world here I mean is the public internet facing database. So I will use simply launch VPC wizard. I will use a VPC with a public and private subnet. I simply select that. With this VPC, I'll simply call it, say, JDBC VPC. My public subnet, I can call it, say, JDBC public subnet, and my private subnet is a JDBC private subnet. I can choose one of the elastic IPs over here, and then I simply create the VPC. So it will take a while when the VPC is created. While it is creating the VPC, I can also show you that I have created an S3 bucket, say called Dozo Lake. And this S3 bucket I'm going to use as a destination. So once I perform the transformation, I want to actually copy my data to this location. So that's what I will do. So let's come back and wait till the VPC is ready. Okay, so the VPC is ready now. So I can simply, you can see that VPC has been successful. If I say OK, I should see a new VPC created for me. You can see a JDBC VPC has been created for me. So I'm all good. So my VPC is ready now, and this VPC I'm going to use as a network path to reach out to my public facing internet using NAT gateway. Now I can start, my S3 bucket is already in place, which is used to store my data at the destination after transformation if I want to make a copy of the data. And I'm going to use DataBrew. So let's start with the DataBrew first. And then first we'll create a data set. So we start with creation of a data set. And this data set will represent the data which is connecting to the PostgreSQL database. So I simply say I want to connect to a data set. And in this case, let me close this one. I go to my JDBC. I want to connect to a JDBC, add JDBC connection. Let's call it RNA, RNA central connection. I want to enter the JDBC details, of course. My database is a Postgres database. My host is, let me copy paste from my other screen. This is my host. My port is 5432. My database is actually this. And then my database user is a reader. So my database user is a reader, and name is reader, and then here is my password. And after this, this is going to create a glue connection or ENI. So it needs to know which VPC. So I simply go to my VPC and say I want to use my JDBC VPC. And then in this case, I want to use my private subnet, because private subnet will have access to the outside world using NAT gateway. So I simply select my private subnet, and then I use my default. Oops, oh, I mistake it. I need to do it again. Give me 2 minutes. RNA central, Postgres. My host is this one, and then my database is this. My reader is reader, and then my password is password. Then I come down, I select my VPC, which is JDBC. Then I come down again, I select my subnet, which is private subnet. I select my security group, and then without any mistake, I come down, I create my connection. So it will create the connection for me. So now my connection is created. Now I can click on my connection. And asking for the table name, and table name is RNA sen. That's my schema name, RNA sen, and then I say RNC underscore database. I just selected one database from there. So RNA dot RNC underscore database, and I say I want to create a data set, and it's asking for data set name. I'll simply say RNA data set, and create the data set. So now my data set has been created, and this data set actually connects to my RNA Central external public internet facing database, and it is connecting to a table inside that database, that is RNC underscore database. So now I can select this data set and say I want to create a project with this data set. So click on creating project with data set. I will call it RNA project. Then you come down all the way, you make sure you have selected your data set. Then here you can say I want to create a new role altogether. Give this role a name, so I can say RNA DataBrew role. Hopefully there's no duplicate here. And then RNA DataBrew role, and then we create the project. So now what it's going to do, it's going to set up a new project and environment for me. And using this project, actually, I can then work with the data, the table in the RNA database, and then I can perform different types of operations. So we will wait till the project creation completes, because it might take a couple of minutes. Okay, so the project is ready, the environment is ready. It took a couple of minutes, roughly 1 to 2 minutes for me to have it ready. And you can see here now I'm connecting to that external database. and I am fetching data from this RNC underscore database table. Now let me perform certain transformation here. For instance, I'm not interested in all the fields. I just want, for instance, user stamp, description, and probably a full description and nothing more than that. Rest of the fields I want to drop, probably display name, yeah, something like that. And then rest I want to simply drop. And again, I'm taking this as one of the examples in transformation, but you can see here you can perform a number of transformation using the Glue DataBrew. So let me go to the columns and say I want to delete the columns. It has started configuring a recipe for me. So I say out of all these columns, I don't want ID, I don't want timestamp, user stamp, I just want description, and I want full description, and then I don't want alive, I don't want for release, I want a display name for sure. But then I don't want any other fields. For instance, I'm just interested in these fields, three fields. You can see here I have said drop all the fields, but except these three fields. Now you might say, if I'm dropping these fields or deleting these fields, is it going to delete the column in the database behind? And the answer is no. It is not going to do that. It is whatever data set you see over here, which represents the data from your database, you are modifying this view only. You are not changing the data at the source, which is a very commonly asked question to me actually. So you are simply changing this view of the data set. You are not changing the original data. So I have now configured it. You can see here I want to drop these fields, and one of the best feature of DataBrew is that whenever you perform some transformation, if you want to see how it's going to look like, you can simply click on preview changes, and it is going to show you how does the preview of the data going to look like. So now the preview of the data is that all these red columns you see, these columns are getting dropped, and all these white columns you see, these columns will remain there. So these columns are going to be remain there. All the pink columns or red columns, yeah, whatever you call that, those columns are going to get dropped. So you can simply say, okay, fine, I'm going to apply this. Now, when you're applying it, whatever you saw in the preview is getting applied to your data set. Again, it is getting applied to your data set, not in the database in the backend. So you could be rest assured that you are not modifying your data at the source. Okay. Now I have performed my transformation. I was interested in only 3 columns from that data table, nothing more than that. So what I can do now, I can now create a job and move this data to the S3 bucket. So I simply click on create a job, and I will call this say RNA job, and so I want to send data in the CSV or which format. You can see here let's keep it to CSV for now. Let's select the S3 location. So if I come to my S3, yeah, you know, Dojo Lake, I created a bucket. I want to dump data over there. Then I can schedule it. I can do some other job settings, but right now I'm not doing that. I'm simply going to select one of the roles, like in this case RNA DataBrew roles, which I created earlier, and I'm going to create and run the job. Now, when again, this job I could have scheduled to do it multiple times in a day or in a week, based on what schedule you want to run it. But right now I'm running this job on demand, and what's going to do, this job is going to read the whole data from the data set, and it is then going to apply the transformation on that data, and it will copy that transformed data into the S3 bucket I have set. Again, it's simply applying the transformation and saving to S3 bucket. It is still not going to make any changes to the previous changes to the original or the source data. So if I go to my jobs over in the left hand side, I can see my status is running. So we will wait till the status changes to successful, and then we can go to the S3 bucket and see the data created. So yeah, let's wait till the job completes. Okay, so after a couple of minutes, you can see in the 3 minutes time, the whole job has completed. Now the status is successful. Now if I go to my S3 bucket and if I refresh my bucket, I should see a folder. Very nice. And if I go inside that, I can see the data. So now this is the data which has been taken from that public facing internet database and have been moved into my S3 bucket. So that was all for the demo, guys, today. Yeah, hope you liked the video. This was a demonstration how you can use Glue DataBrew to connect to a JDBC endpoints to a relational database and can perform transformation on the data and also move a copy of the data to the S3 bucket. If you like the video, please click on the like button. Please subscribe to my channel. And we always look forward to your feedback, whether it is for new content or any follow-up question you have about our videos, or we made some mistake and you want to correct it. Yeah, any of those things, please provide your feedback in the comment section of our YouTube channel. I promise to come back again in a week's time with another such tutorial, such a video. In the meantime, stay safe and have a nice day. Bye-bye.